Welcome to the Hotelligence Podcast, your strategic vantage point on the changing landscape of hotel safety. Hosted by Jim Kortz, a retired FBI DHS investigator, and Don Carr, a former frontline security owner-operator with years of first-hand incident response experience on hotel properties. Every episode brings you closer to understanding the full picture and what the future may hold. Let's begin.
Welcome back to the Hotelligence Podcast. This is Season 2. Episode 6.
So on the last episode, we looked at escalation and why the instinct to hand off risk often creates more of it.
Yeah, and today we're talking about what drives that instinct.
Right, ambiguity.
Simply put, Jim, specifically, why ambiguity isn't a failure state and why resolving it too early can cost more than leaving it open.
So first, let's talk about the moment that most housekeeping supervisors have stood in, right? It's the door that doesn't answer.
Day 2 of a scheduled checkout.
Yep. Do not disturb sign has been on the door since check-in.
Not a peep from the room.
No complaints.
No contact from the guest.
Right. Just a door and silence. And in that hallway, the pressure arrives pretty fast, right? Something could be wrong. Something could be completely fine. The guest could be sleeping or could be gone. It really could be anything. And the staff member standing at that door knows that whatever they do next becomes a decision. Do you knock again, call the room, enter, or just wait? And every option has a record. So the pressure to pick one, to name the situation and move, is pretty immediate. And that pressure is understandable. Moving too fast because of it is where the problem starts. So that brings us to what naming it costs. Once that situation gets a label, everything follows from it.
Yeah, the response fits the label.
And the documentation fits the label.
And it's the label that survives the moment.
Right, not the uncertainty that preceded it.
Right. So, the incident report doesn't say we weren't sure what was happening behind that door. It says what was concluded. And a conclusion made in a hallway under pressure in review, well, that looks exactly like a conclusion made with full information. So the gap, well, that's between what was actually known and what was recorded. And that's where the exposure lives. Not in the door itself, but in how fast it got named.
Yeah, well said. So let's talk about if the label fits, the decisions that follow are defensible.
Right. And if it doesn't, every decision that follows compounds the error.
And the original uncertainty disappears from the record.
What remains is a chain of decisions built on a frame that didn't fit.
Right, but that's not a staffing problem.
That's right, Jim. Contrary to popular belief, rather that's a resolution problem.
And it started the moment someone needed the ambiguity just to be over. So what ambiguity actually preserves? Let's talk about that, right? So an unresolved situation still has options.
Right, and a resolved one doesn't.
So saying we were still assessing is a position.
Right, that's a position, not evasion.
Yeah, it's an accurate description of operating under incomplete information. Okay, so let's go back to that door. A hotel that can show it observed, noted the sign, attempted contact, and continued monitoring without forcing a conclusion that wasn't supported yet has preserved something. It kept the options open long enough for the information to arrive. That's not hesitation. That's the record of a process that didn't outrun what was actually known. And so let's now talk about how structure holds the hallway. So the alternative to premature resolution isn't paralysis.
No, you just said it, Jim. It's structure.
Right, structure. And structure tells the housekeeper what the hallway requires before the pressure of it arrives.
not what to conclude.
Right. But what to do with the uncertainty while it's still uncertainty.
Well said. And that distinction between acting on ambiguity and acting within it, well, that's one of the most consequential things a hotel can build into how it operates. The housekeeper in that hallway isn't the problem. The absence of anything solid to stand on is. So structure doesn't remove the ambiguity. It removes the isolation of facing it alone.
In closing, ambiguity isn't incompetence.
No, it's the condition every hotel operator works inside of.
Right. The instinct to resolve it quickly is real.
But the label that closes the discomfort also closes the options.
And closing options built on an incomplete frame are what get examined.
That's correct. And holding ambiguity open, that's not indecision.
Nope, it's discipline.
The door, well, it's still there.
Yeah, and what matters is what the record shows about how you stood in front of it. So that's season 2, episode 6 of the Hotelligence podcast.
Next time, the shift note. What it actually captures, what it doesn't, and why it isn't the same as a summary. And remember, we're in this together.
And together, we make hospitality stronger.
The insider briefing goes out on Wednesday. Link is in the show notes.
Thank you for joining the Hotelligence podcast, where experience informs smarter, safer hotel operations and prepares you for what comes next. Stay informed, stay confident, and stay connected. As the conversation evolves, Jim Cords and Don Carr will highlight developments that help hotels strengthen their approach to safety and risk management. See you next episode.